Welcome to my Resident Evil Revelations review. Um, this is my first Resident Evil game that I've ever played, so I will be a little bit biased towards this game because I absolutely love it. And obviously, this is the game that got me into the series and into survival horror in the first place. So obviously, going to be a bit biased towards it, but bear with me. And my first point about this game, what makes it so great to me, is that the soundtrack is amazing, and that kind of leads into like the ambiance and the setting overall. Like this game takes place in like obviously you can see a ship in the middle of the ocean. So you see that mouse right there. That means that just played absolutely perfect. You only see it for just a little bit, and yeah, all the music in this game for like the boss fights, just walking around, whenever you encounter an enemy, it's absolutely fantastic. It's very eerie, and it's very weird to describe, but it's very aquatic. Obviously, the whole game's theme is like water. I mean, obviously they're out in the ocean, but um, yeah, that's really all I really have to say about the soundtrack. Is I mean, it's very good. I have a whole Spotify playlist where I just have some of these songs on it. I mean, I can't really say anything else other than that. It's just very, very good soundtrack, and that gets me kind of into the gameplay. The gameplay is okay. It's a lot like Resident Evil 5 and 6, where you basically hold forward, and if you want to go right, you tilt the camera to the right, and tilt the camera to the left if you want to go left, obviously. But it's very easy to use once you spend like 5 seconds with it. But at first, it was a little bit confusing for me because I played at first on the Nintendo Switch. I'm playing on PS5 right now, but on Nintendo Switch, it was a little bit difficult for me to get used to it because I'm used to uh like God of War or like 2018 and Ragnarok, where all I have to do is just hold forward, and
I got
the
something.
my motion didn't depend
I
on the
think it's a
camera
gun.
necessarily.
No,
But with
Martin.
this one, the camera depends on
Give
what
me a
direction you're
sec.
going, other than backwards or forwards. So if you want to go left, you have to tilt the camera left. If you want to go right, you have to tilt the camera right. But the combat is very good. You have a lot of weapon variety, which really brings me to my next point. There is a lot of weapons. Most of them are the same type of weapon, but they all have
So,
different
it's no
stats
case.
and different upgrades that you can use to make them really powerful. Like I think mainly what I've always used is just the handgun, shotgun, and rifle, sniper rifle. And that's basically what I use every single playthrough because handgun's good for just poking at enemies, shotgun's good for blasting them apart, and rifle's good for bosses and such. Oh crap! Hold on. That brings me to that point right there. Is that I like that they added a way to fight back when if an enemy grabs you, because I know in other games you couldn't really do that, probably because of just technical difficulties. They couldn't really program that into like the original Resident Evil, even though she is like a trained. If I'm not mistaken, Jill was in
This
like the
explains our
military or
missing
something, so
crew.
it would make sense if she could
This
fight
is
away
not
like
good.
zombies and stuff. But this right here, like, it gives you an
Chris.
option to kind of break yourself away and get to safety. That way you can keep fighting. It gives you more chances than most other Resident Evil games. Of course, you play like Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, the originals. You can't really dodge anything. I mean, you can in 3, but the dodge sucks in that game. You can't really you can't really defend yourself quite as well if you get grabbed or hit or something like that. You could just get stun locked to death. Obviously, that's not really complaining about those games. It's just, can I? That is very loud. But what was I saying? I completely lost the point. Um, well, I have my notes right here. Yes, the older games, like you could just get stun locked and just get killed. This game's a lot easier. Like if you get grabbed, you can move the left stick forwards and backwards. I mean, left to right, and it can break you loose. There's a dodge mechanic, even though it's very, very tight. That's not right. Okay, but like the gameplay, like it. This game came out. I forget when it came out, but it was originally for the 3DS. Like it's going to be a little bit clunky. Can't really complain about that. But I mean, it came out several years ago. So I mean, what do you expect? That also brings me to my next point: is that it's a Resident Evil game. There's obviously a story-based game, but the story is very confusing. Obviously, Resident Evil hasn't really been known to have a very coherent story. Everything gets confused and jumbled up. Just doesn't make sense a lot of the times. Like in this game, you have where
Careful now.
you shoot
Don't worry,
Raymond,
I've done this
and
before.
I mean, obviously, I think Jessica shoots him, and like you shot, like he's shot, he dies, but you see him die, and then somehow he doesn't die, and he's working with Jessica for some reason after
I've
she
got
shot
something.
him. No clue why. I don't think it has ever been explained. Resident Evil Revelations 2, I don't even think ties in with this one. It's completely new, completely
What
different
is this?
characters. And then you
If
have
it's an
Parker where he
engineered
falls into
mutation,
a blazing
this could
inferno,
prove a link.
and
I'll run
somehow he
some tests on you.
survives. I don't know how. Like you
Continue
see
with
him
the
fall into
investigation.
a fire, but he somehow survives. I'm glad that he survives, but it makes no sense that he did. But overall, like if you can look past like certain discrepancies, that's basically just in every Resident Evil game. The story's still pretty darn good. Like I would highly the lore itself is also very good. You have you have a certain boss where I think he's like the captain of the ship or something like that, and basically, of course, he's mutated into a giant monster, and he's saying like Mayday, Mayday, blah blah blah. Like he's still calling for help, and you go and read his notebook, and you could tell how like he's slowly transformed into just this big blubbering creature, and you almost kind of feel bad for him at that point. Like obviously he's like an innocent guy just turned into a gigantic blob monster. So obviously like sucks for him, but there's several bosses like that. Of course, the very last boss was betrayed by I forget what the main bad guy in this game is. He's the head of the FBC. I forget his name, but basically got betrayed by that guy, and um, basically his whole plot is basically just to get revenge on him and basically to frame him and basically end his whole life, end his whole career. Of course, I believe it does, but I know that guy over there. I forget his name too. Like he apparently he has like a whole role in it. Most of it, I wouldn't say most of it, but part of it's his fault as well for covering everything up. So basically, he steps down and retires and writes a bunch of novels and stuff whenever he probably should be in jail. That's just another discrepancy with the story, but overall, like the story's very good if you can just ignore it, just sit back and just let it happen. I think it's much more enjoyable that way. But like going into the lore, like it's very interesting about how all these characters connect and all what their motivations are and everything like that. But that, if I was saying like the final boss, like he was like a normal dude, transformed it into like this creature just out of pure spite. And that kind of brings me to the next point: is that the bosses in this game are very good. I really enjoy the bosses. The final boss is pretty pretty difficult. I would say it reminds me of a tyrant, but he teleports and then he makes like copies of himself almost, and it's very confusing. But it's a very confusing fight to get the hang of. But once you do, it's a very satisfying boss fight. And there's another one where you're on an elevator and you have to basically move to one side or the other to avoid being hit by his like big hammer arm thing. And then at the very end, he like this big hulking creature in this small room. So you kind of have to work your way around. Like I forget, I don't know what it was, but it looks like a bunch of like food stands and stuff. Like the boss arena was very well made for that fight. It was very tight and cramped with a big boss. So you really had to work your way through the room and try your best to keep your distance. I mean, I don't know. I know most people consider that bad boss design because typically, if you fight a big boss, you want a big boss arena. But I actually disagree with that. I prefer fighting big bosses in smaller rooms. I don't know why, but I just find it to be easier. And I forget there's a Rachel. That this also goes more into the lore, but Rachel was Raymond's partner who ended up getting lost, and you'll see her a little bit later in the game. I don't know if I'll have time to show it or not, but she basically gets killed by one of these uh, monsters, and she ends up turning into one herself. And like you could go online, just look up Rachel's boss fight, and you'll see why.
There you
You'll
are.
see why
Nice
her
work.
design's weighted.
No
It's a good
doubt about
design,
it.
but
These
it's
corpses show
very
signs of viral
uh,
infection.
And I bet it's no coincidence they came
very
through the FBC's blockade.
mid 2000s, I would
Well,
say.
we did all
Probably
we
the best
can.
way to describe it.
Now, we
But
wait for the results to come
this game
back
takes a
from
lot from like
HQ.
Japanese horror. Of course,
Huh?
Japanese
What's
horror is
the
a lot
emergency
different than
light?
American horror, which is like a typical
Yeah,
like zombie
it's me.
outbreak kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
So they take a lot of Japanese art design for
What?
the monsters of this game, which I think is very good.
Yes, that's fine.
But just
I'll take it from here.
go too far into Google
We'll have to
because
speed things up.
like not good. But
Starting now.
overall, like all the bosses have certain like
Uh-huh.
bits of lore. It's
Good.
very
Get to it.
it ties into everything. Like with Rachel and the final boss, they all tie together
Leo,
somehow. Eventually,
Parker,
they all tie together.
you two are still on the case.
And
What happened?
We lost
and
contact
also
with
with
Chris
boss
and
design, that kind of
Jessica.
leads me to the next point of the art
Wait.
design.
How?
The art, I think the
We're
art
not
design is
certain.
very good.
I've sent their last.
I'll just skip this cutscene that we can get back to the ship. But most of the time you spend on the ship, and it's very elegant. But also at times it's like very disgusting and just almost kind of molded. I guess is the best way to describe it. It's just very waterlogged. It's always very rainy and foggy. Yeah, we're on the Queen Zenobia, that ship. Like the outside is very foggy. Over here, it's very bloody and just disgusting. And but you get further into the game to the main area, it's actually very elegant. You get to the casino, it's very elegant. It's very pretty to look at, even in these old. I don't know what year this game came out. I completely forget, but uh, even in these basic graphics, it still looks very pretty to look at. It's very bright, shiny. There's a lot of gold texture to it, and I don't know why, but that on like a ship having like a casino on it is just it's a very interesting choice, and I don't think they really could have done it any better than that. I know they was making Resident Evil 6 at the same time as this, so they were kind of split up over this. Also, the Mercenaries came out right before this too on the 3DS, so I mean, I don't think this game had a lot of really a lot of help to make it. So I guess they couldn't really do everything to their full potential, I guess. But you could tell that they executed very well with what they had. Like like I said, like the lore is very. It's like they try to blend everything together from 5 to 6 and all that, but it kind of works. It kind of fails in a way. There it is. But like I said, the art design's very good. Enemy design, fantastic. Like that right there, like the way they just dissipate and just melt. I think it's very satisfying for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, like you'll get later into the game, see all this pretty architecture and all that. It reminds me of. It doesn't really remind me of Spencer's Mansion at all, but it kind of does in a way too. Just how I guess how regal it is. I guess is the best way to describe it. So you go into Spencer's Mansion, and like it's clear that someone rich lives there, and it's clear that you have to be rich to be on this ship. I mean, it's quite clear like how nice a casino is, and the room right before it where you go to all these different floors where the main elevator is. When I was talking about that boss, you could tell that it cost a lot of money to make this ship, and it cost a lot of money to get on the ship. And now I'm getting to the points where they don't kind of lead into each other. I'm basically just going to hop from one to the other. The difficulty in this game is very good. I mean, it's very balanced, I should say. Nothing's too hard, but it's not like a complete pushover either. Obviously, most of the difficulty is going to be in the final boss because it's tricky figuring out its patterns and how it makes copies of itself. It disappears. It uh, it hits very hard. Most of the attacks will probably 2 or 3 shot you, and you only have 5 heals available. So if you use all 5 heals, you're pretty much out of luck. But no other enemy is very hard at all. But it's very balanced. A lot of everything in here is a bullet sponge. See, the basic enemies take 7 basic handgun ammo to put down. Of course, like this isn't upgraded at all, so I can't really complain about that. I wouldn't even say that's a complaint. I'd say it's realistic, I guess, or as realistic as fighting like weird flesh water monsters would be. And that kind of gets into the next point of the raid mode, where all you do is fight the enemies. Raid mode is fun at first, but it gets very repetitive and it kind of gets boring. And if you want to go for the platinum, you have to finish raid mode, but you can't do it solo at all, which I don't really like how you would do that, because this is the whole game, the whole Resident Evil series is basically just a solo story game. Like, I think this is the only game in the series that has a raid mode other than Revelations 2, I think. I might be wrong about that, so whatever, but I think raid mode was good at first, and then the more you do it, the more tired of it you get. You just get bored with it pretty quickly, and I think it'd be a lot better if you have somebody to actually play with, but if you don't, then it's just going to be a boring, repetitive grind that you're not even going to be able to get the platinum with, because I think it's impossible to do it without a partner to play it with. Right? I mean, I kind of want to think of a way to do it without getting a partner, but I just don't think it's possible. And I don't like how it's basically impossible to complete for the platinum. I guess you don't have to do raid mode with somebody else, but in order to 100% complete the game, I'm pretty sure you have to have someone play with you. And I don't like when games really do that. I understand it if it's like a Call of Duty game, but I mean, obviously Call of Duty, it's a multiplayer game for the most part. But like the whole series is just you can play by yourself and get the platinum for, I think, like 95% of the other games. But I can't really complain about that, because I mean, they tried something different, and some will say that it works, some say that it wouldn't. I don't think the raid mode was executed very well, but I also rarely play the raid mode. The only thing I really play is the main campaign. Every once in a while, I'll go into raid mode just to kill something fast. I would have to go look through the whole ship just to find an enemy to kill, but basically, like, if you just want to kill enemies, that's probably your best bet to do that. Okay, well, yeah, if you just want to kill enemies, your best bet's the raid mode. But if you want to have like a cohesive story, a very balanced story, not just enemy after enemy after enemy, I would definitely just do the campaign, or do the raid mode with a partner if you have someone to co-op with you. Otherwise, it's just a drag. It's just not worth playing it at that point. And but honestly, I think that about wraps it up at this point. It's a very good game. It has some problems like the raid mode, and like the story's a bit confusing. How some people seem like you very clearly see them die, but then they just don't die for some reason. They're like, oh, yep, they popped up later. So it has a couple of story inconsistencies. The raid mode wasn't executed very well. I've never played Mercenaries, so I don't know if that's a fair comparison or not. I don't know how good raid mode was, or not raid mode, but Resident Evil Mercenaries was. But if it's anything like raid mode, I doubt that'll be very good. I mean, why am I talking about Mercenaries? This is a completely different game. But I don't know if that had any say in what Revelations did with their raid mode, or how much they I wouldn't say copy from it, but took from it and basically just implanted it into this game. But I mean, in regards to like the story of like the campaign mode, you could pick this game up at basically any point playing through the series, you
Great.
can understand the story because the overall story, it doesn't really reference anything from other games. You mainly get that through like lore pickups from like looking at certain material like notes and posters and stuff like that. But if you pick this up and just want to play through it, you can pick it up at any point during playing through the series, and you can understand it as long as you don't like go too deep. Then it starts to get a little bit confusing. But I would say prior knowledge to the series is probably preferred to play this, but you don't need to understand this game's story, but you'll need to obviously play the other games to understand the wider
Lost
story.
contact with Chris and
And yeah, like I said, like just prior knowledge is preferred, but it's not really required for this game. It's just for to understand the whole series and where this fits in, it takes place. And like it has if you're looking to this to play your first Resident Evil game, it's very good. I know for a while Resident Evil kind of just went to action from like RE4, 5, uh, a couple of spin like Operation Raccoon City,
Slow
basically just
down,
pure
Chris.
action. Of course, this
We're
game
almost
has
there,
some
Jessica.
sections like that, like the one we're just getting into is basically just
Starting
pure
to hope
action.
so.
You're just
My
constantly
feet are
swarmed by
killing
these
me.
Our source
gigantic
indicates the
dogs,
camp is on the far side
or
of
I
this
guess
peak.
wolves, I guess, but I don't really know. But there are some sections in here that's just complete action, and then I've noticed that it's only that way with Chris, Jessica, and the two idiots. I forget their name. But whenever you're playing as Jill and Parker, it's actually a pretty balanced horror to survival experience, and has pretty good gameplay. I mean, it's very easy to control. I mean, you have the classic setup for a third-person shooter. I mean, it's the same as every other Resident Evil game from since Resident Evil 4, and it's very similar to how 6, 7, and 8 and all the remakes. It's similar to how they play, but it's not quite exact. Because of course you have like the directional movement right here, as I just showed. But I mean, it's very easy to get the hang of. Although I would say this is a little bit slow. So like if there's an enemy behind you, you can do like a turn right here. But in combat, I never think of that. I always just do this right here, and I always end up getting hurt at least once doing it. But I mean, that's just a skill issue on my part. But like the atmosphere, obviously, it's very good. Like out here, you're in the mountains. It's very foggy, and you could tell that they're trying to go for horror in this, but that like the enemy placement and the swarms, it just makes it pure action. So the enemy placement, I think, is what actually kind of ruins the atmosphere of this particular area. But whenever you're actually on the ship, it's absolutely fantastic. The enemy placement is near perfect, in my opinion. It keeps like a constant, steady pace going. You're constantly in like this dreary environment where, like like nobody's coming to help you. Of course, you later in the game you fix the antenna system and all this crazy stuff happens, and and you do get a hold of somebody, and it kind of bamboozles you to where they're not going to send you help, but then they actually do. So it kind of, for the most part, it kind of gives that feeling that you're helpless out here, like nobody's going to come and help you, and you got to just do it on your own, I guess. And I think that's very good for a game like this, where you're basically stranded on a ship. Where is the key? Oh, I do so. But, like this is a very good game. You can pick it up at any point, understand it. It's very easy to play. It's very enjoyable. I will say that this is my first Resident Evil game, so I'm obviously a little bit biased towards it. It's my favorite. I would say this is my favorite Resident Evil game. Probably one of my favorite games of all time. I don't know why it is, but I just got the key. Okay, oh, that's for the other people. But basically, like this is a very good game. I would recommend playing it. I would give it a score of like an 8 out of 10. It's very good. So if you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. Press the notification bell, all that stuff. And with that, I will see you in the next one, and have a wonderful day.